The vaulted chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with cold light, polished metal and crystalline arches reflecting 1,000 shifting hues. Every world that mattered in the galaxy had sent a delegate, each seated in carved hollows rising like tears of judgment. Massive insectoids clacked their mandibles, whispering in rapid code. Amphibious lords from the water worlds blinked lidless eyes, their translucent throats pulsing with disapproval. Feathered avians preened in silken robes, talons drumming impatiently on polished stone. The air carried a hum of disdain, as if humanity's presence alone soiled the grandeur of the hall. At the center stood a single figure, Earth's appointed envoy. He was unremarkable to the casual eye, neither tall nor imposing, a middle-aged man in a simple dark suit that had no shimmer, no jewels, no alien insignia. He held himself with a politeness that verged on humility, chin lowered slightly, hands clasped loosely behind his back. His voice, when he finally spoke, was warm and almost apologetic, like a teacher explaining a misunderstanding to unruly students. Few noticed how sharp his eyes were, how carefully he measured the room, how every pause and smile seemed weighted with hidden meaning. "Honored Council," he began, bowing his head just enough to amuse the delegates who enjoyed such gestures. "I come on behalf of the people of Earth, grateful for the invitation to this assembly. You have many concerns, I am sure, and I am but a newcomer to your long traditions." Murmurs rippled through the tiers. To the insectoids, his voice was laughably soft. To the avians, his body seemed too heavy, lacking grace. To the scaled reptilians who sat coiled on cushions, his flesh looked thin and fragile, like fruit peel. A few chuckled openly, their amusement amplified by translation devices that broadcast their mirth in tones the human could not miss. The presiding chancellor, a towering cephalopod draped in chains of authority, stirred from the central dais. Its many eyes glistened with cold radiance. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus, mechanical resonance overlaying watery gurgle. "Human delegate, you are summoned not to flatter, but to obey. The tribute demanded by this council is non-negotiable. Every emerging world pays its share. Grain, minerals, soldiers, and breeding stock. Such is the custom." The words fell like hammers. Some delegates nodded solemnly, others smirked as if savoring the humiliation about to unfold. The human bowed again, too courteous, too calm. "I see," he said softly. "So it is tribute you require." "Require?" A tusked beast from the frozen north worlds leaned forward, ice crystals falling from its fur. "No, human. It is tribute we command." The envoy's lips curved faintly, as though embarrassed by his own people's backwardness. "Forgive me, I am still learning your ways. Tribute, of course. May I ask what precisely is desired? We are a modest world. Our cattle are sturdy, though the better cuts are rather popular at our McDonald's. Forgive me, an Earth institution. Hard to export." A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. The translator stumbled over the unfamiliar word, repeating it as McDonald's. Some aliens blinked, some laughed at the strange sound. A feathered lord clicked his beak in annoyance. "You make light of sacred decree?" The envoy raised his hands in placation, expression guileless. "Not at all. I assure you, our people value obedience when it is due. Yet, cattle, grain, minerals, soldiers, breeding stock." He let the list hang in the air, as if tasting each word carefully. "You seem to want rather a lot from a single blue marble spinning quietly on the edge of nowhere." The Chancellor's tentacles writhed. "You misunderstand. We do not want. We own. Tribute is proof you accept your place beneath us. Fail, and your world will be corrected." At that, laughter scattered through the tiers, sharp and dismissive. A pair of insectoid delegates slapped their limbs together in mirth, while a scaled matron hissed her amusement. "Corrected," she repeated, savoring the word. "Yes. Many worlds resist once. Never twice." The envoy tilted his head as though pondering a difficult lesson. His smile remained faint, his voice mild. "I admire your efficiency. Earth, however, is peculiar. We do not always resist once. Sometimes not at all. Sometimes, well, sometimes once is enough. The chamber hushed briefly, uncertain whether he had erred in translation or dared a joke. His tone was too gentle, too unassuming. Surely he meant nothing dangerous. The avians whispered that humans were clumsy with language. The insectoids buzzed that primitive mammals lacked precision. A few, however, the oldest, the scarred, the wary, leaned forward, sensing something beneath the surface. The Chancellor pressed on, irritated. Your words are irrelevant. The tribute is due. Within one cycle, your ships will deliver resources and bodies. Failure to comply will result in immediate sanction. You will learn obedience as others have. The envoy lowered his gaze as though chastened. For a long pause, he said nothing. The chamber filled with smug anticipation. Here was the moment the primitives would bow, surrendering their place at the feet of the elder races. Here was proof that the council's order remained unshaken. Then the envoy lifted his head. His eyes no longer wandered the chamber in timid awe. They fixed, sharp and unwavering, on the Chancellor's gleaming bulk. His smile lingered, but it no longer softened his words. It sharpened them. I have your answer, he said. One word. The room grew still. Even the translators hesitated, waiting. The human's voice, though quiet, carried with sudden clarity through every tier, every corner, every recording device. He spoke as though he were sharing a secret with each delegate personally, a whisper placed directly in their ear. War, he said. War awaits you. The word struck the chamber like a blow. The translators faltered, repeating it again and again in 100 alien tongues, each more jarring than the last. Murmurs became gasps. Gasps became roars. Delegates shouted over one another, some outraged, some disbelieving, some suddenly afraid. The insectoids shrieked that the primitives were insane. The avians cawed that such defiance was suicide. The scaled matron hissed warnings to silence him, yet her eyes flickered with something uneasy. The Chancellor's bulk loomed higher, chains of office clattering. What did you say, human? The envoy did not flinch. He spoke again, clear and calm. War. Not tribute, not obedience. War awaits you. It always has. The uproar became thunderous. Guards pressed forward, weapons gleaming, uncertain whether to seize the envoy or wait for orders. Delegates pounded stone with claws and limbs, voices rising in chaos. Some demanded immediate invasion of Earth. Others called for restraint, unwilling to risk the council's dignity with haste. A few ancient ones whispered to their neighbors, remembering fragments of history, old warnings about species who laughed before they killed. The humans simply bowed once more, a courteous farewell. We thank you for your generous invitation. Earth will see you soon. He turned and walked calmly from the chamber, footsteps echoing against polished stone, unhurried despite the storm behind him. Guards hesitated to block his path, as though his composure unsettled them more than violence would have. No one touched him as he left, no one dared. When the chamber doors closed, the uproar only grew. Some delegates shrieked for war at once. Others urged study, recalling the disappearance of fleets that had underestimated young species before. The Chancellor's eyes swirled with fury, yet behind the rage there flickered uncertainty, a faint tremor of unease. For all their might, the Council had not expected this answer, not in 1,000 scenarios. And far down the silent corridors, away from the Council's roar, the human envoy allowed himself the faintest of smiles, sharp, cold, and utterly devoid of apology. The council chamber had not cooled even after the human left. The air still trembled with outrage, fear, and disbelief. Delegates shouted in overlapping tongues, their translator units struggling to keep pace. Or, that single syllable echoed like a curse in the minds of those assembled, a primitive word sharpened into a blade. By the time it spread beyond the chamber walls, it was no longer a whisper but a shockwave moving through the galaxy. Across a dozen star systems, broadcasts carried the story. Humanity, barely recognized as a legitimate member of the Galactic Order, had spat in the face of tradition. Hollow anchors in crystal towers announced it with smirks, calling Earth delusional, a barbaric world already doomed by arrogance. Children of the avian species mimicked the word war as a joke, flapping wings and shrieking in play. Insectoid analysts insisted that humans lacked the numerical swarm to matter. The scaled matronships dismissed Earth as soft flesh, ripe for harvest. And yet, beneath the waves of mockery, unease curled like smoke. Because no one had ever answered the council like that before. Not even the proudest, oldest worlds. The Chancellor convened emergency meetings, his chains clattering in fury, but even within his ranks whispers spread. What if humanity knew something the others didn't? What if the simplicity of their word carried more weight than anyone dared to admit? To admit fear was weakness, so they ridiculed instead, yet some of their eyes lingered on the star charts longer than usual, tracing the insignificant blue marble that suddenly felt less distant. On Earth, however, the mood was different. Beneath the surface of mountains where satellites could not peer, in a bunker lit by dim amber lamps, the envoy who had stood so meekly in the council chamber shed his polite mask. The suit jacket lay folded neatly on a chair, replaced by a simple black uniform with no insignia. His posture shifted from deferential to commanding. Around him sat generals, scientists, strategists, men and women whose laughter filled the room like gunfire. "You should have seen their faces," one of the generals cackled, pounding the table. "You dropped that word like a grenade in a nursery. Or, they'll be choking on it for months." The envoy smirked, a thin smile no longer masked by courtesy. "They thought they summoned us to be servants. Instead, they summoned a storm. And storms don't kneel." Maps and holograms flickered above the table, alien trade routes, weak points in supply chains, communications hubs disguised as sanctuaries. Humanity had studied longer than anyone guessed. They had played harmless, kept quiet, let others underestimate them. Now the masks were dropping. Soldiers joked as they worked, tossing around Earth humor that no alien would understand. One suggested sending fleets with baseball bats strapped to the hulls. Another asked whether they should start exporting barbecue sauce as a chemical weapon. The room roared with laughter, but beneath the humor lay steel. These were killers who could laugh while drawing blood. Far away, in the void between stars, a small alien scout fleet made its move. Their mission was simple: test Earth's defenses, confirm weakness, prepare the Council's full strike. Their ships shimmered like insects darting through the dark, nimble and arrogant. They expected to find clumsy defenses, perhaps a few primitive satellites sputtering around a green and blue sphere. Instead, they found silence. Earth's orbit was empty. Too empty. Their sensors flickered. One by one, their systems began to shut down. Lights dimmed, controls locked, engines failed. The scouts panicked, hissing in alarm, but the void answered only with a calm human voice transmitted directly into their minds through hijacked comms. "Welcome to Earth orbit. Thank you for your donation." Then the ships were gone, vanished, swallowed by human hands. Not destroyed, not scattered. Taken. As if the planet had simply reached out and plucked them from the sky. Survivors fled in crippled pods, whispering frantic reports. Their message reached the Council within hours. They planned this. They were waiting. The news sent fresh ripples across the stars. Entire civilizations froze their broadcasts mid-jest. Analysts who had laughed now stumbled through half-hearted corrections. It was only a small fleet, they insisted. Nothing significant. Yet doubt spread like a sickness. If a primitive world could dismantle a fleet without firing a shot, what else were they capable of? Meanwhile, within the Council's vast archives, a few cautious scholars began to unearth records. Humanity's history, long dismissed as quaint savagery, was examined with new eyes. Endless wars catalogued in grim succession. Civilizations rising and burning within centuries. A species that had harnessed fire not merely for survival but for conquest. They discovered phrases etched in Earth's blood-soaked history: total war, scorched Earth, mutually assured destruction. Words that to humans were ordinary, but to the wider galaxy were unthinkable nightmares. Scholars trembled and whispered, "They have lived with war so long it is not fear to them, it is air." Yet most of the Council still scoffed. Pride drowned caution. "They are few. We are many," the Chancellor thundered, tentacles curling. "Their world is small. Ours are countless. They will bend or burn. The declaration reassured the arrogant, but behind closed doors, dissent grew. Some species argued for negotiation. Others whispered of alliances, wondering if siding with Earth might be safer than opposing them. Old rivalries resurfaced as fear clouded judgment. The council that had seemed unshakable began to fracture. Back on Earth, the envoy prepared his next move. He recorded a message, not for the council but for every listening ear across the galaxy. His face appeared calm, his tone courteous, his words wrapped in honey. We extend our gratitude for your attention. We understand tribute is custom, but humanity does not pay tribute. We share freely when respected, but we kneel for no one. Should you come to our world, we will greet you warmly, then bury you deeply. Consider this not threat, but promise. The message ended with a smile so mild it felt wrong, a smile like porcelain over steel. Alien audiences recoiled. Some called it madness, others performance. But all felt unease. Because humanity did not sound afraid. They sounded patient. The alien scout survivors, their eyes wild with memory, gave testimony before the council. They spoke of systems hijacked with surgical precision, of ships vanished like toys snatched by giants. One trembled so violently its scales rattled. They laughed, it whispered. We heard their laughter in our comms as we lost control. The chamber erupted again, but this time the laughter carried less conviction. Jokes faltered. Even the arrogant tusked beast from the frozen world shifted uncomfortably. The Chancellor silenced them with a roar, declaring that Earth would be crushed before the next cycle ended. Yet in his many eyes flickered the shadow of doubt. The envoy sat once more in his bunker, surrounded by humans whose humor masked razor edges. They reviewed intercepted alien broadcasts, chuckling at the disbelief. One soldier held up a hollow of an alien news anchor, mocking their smug tone. Look, they think we're bluffing. Another tossed a ration pack across the table. Maybe send them some of these. Call it tribute. The envoy smiled, but his gaze lingered on the maps of alien space. He knew the council would come, arrogant and blind. That was the plan. Earth had never intended to wait for invasion. They had already begun to move, quietly, invisibly, placing their pieces across the board. War was not coming. War was already here. And still, he thought, the council had not understood the simplest truth. Humans never declared war unless they were already winning it. The bunker fell silent as new data flickered across the screens. Alien fleets were mobilizing, preparing to march on Earth. The envoy leaned forward, his expression unreadable. He spoke softly, almost to himself, but his words carried through the room. They think they are coming for us. They don't realize, they've already invited us in. The laughter that followed was low and dangerous, a sound no alien ear had ever heard and lived to forget. The council's halls no longer rang with laughter. Where once ridicule had flowed freely, now the chamber brimmed with anger and unease. Delegates who had mocked humanity days earlier spoke with harsher tones, but behind their voices lingered tremors. The disappearance of the scout fleet had broken something in the council's certainty. Primitive worlds were meant to struggle, bleed, then kneel. Yet the humans had taken ships whole, as though the void itself answered to them. The Chancellor pounded the dais with writhing limbs, demanding unity. They are but one world, he roared, his chains rattling. Do not let fear distort your judgment. Their audacity is laughable. Their capacity is limited. They have no empire, no colonies, no fleets worthy of the name. We will crush them as we have crushed countless others. His voice filled the chamber, but in the quiet corners whispers grew. Some delegates recalled old rumors, scraps of intercepted history about Earth wars that had burned continents. Others whispered of nuclear fire unleashed by human hands long before the council even acknowledged their existence. A young avian delegate muttered that humans were too willing to die, and therefore impossible to control. A scaled matron hissed in reply that such recklessness was not strength, merely madness. Yet her eyes flickered with unease. In the dark void beyond Earth, the first true strike was launched. A coalition fleet of 20 warships swept into orbit with banners of authority blazing, prepare to shatter Earth's defenses and drag the blue planet into submission. They were veterans, seasoned against a dozen rebellious colonies. Their commanders expected swift victory, their only debate whether Earth would beg quickly or resist stubbornly. Instead, their arrival was met with silence. No missiles fired, no fighters scrambled. The fleet pressed closer, sensors scanning the planet. They detected cities, oceans, forests, deserts, yet no defensive arrays visible. Laughter crackled across alien comms. See? Empty bluster. Nothing to fear. Then the lights went out. One ship after another plunged into darkness. Systems failed, engines locked, weapons froze. Alien captains shouted in confusion as their bridges went blind. Across the fleet, emergency lighting flickered, and into that crimson glow came a human voice, calm and almost amused. "Testing complete," it said. "Thank you for participating. You may go now." And the fleet was gone. Not destroyed, taken, absorbed into silence. Survivors screamed into the void as pods escaped, their voices filled with terror. Reports reached the Council within hours, scattered, contradictory, yet all laced with the same dread. They knew. They waited. They were inside our systems before we arrived. The galaxy reeled. Markets plunged. Worlds that had mocked Earth now quivered, asking if the tribute system itself had cracked. Children whispered, "War awaits," like a ghost story. The word human began to carry new weight, no longer funny but dangerous. Inside the Council, divisions sharpened. Arrogant delegates still demanded overwhelming retaliation. Others pleaded for negotiation, citing the risk of disaster. Factions formed overnight, alliances shifting. The Council chamber, once a cathedral of order, grew poisonous with fear. Meanwhile, in the hidden depths of Earth, the envoy met with his generals. The bunker hummed with power, maps of alien space glowing across every wall. The envoy, once polite to the point of meekness, now moved with quiet authority. His voice carried no apology. "They will come again," he said. "Larger fleets. Louder threats. That is what fear does. It blinds. Let them come. The deeper they press, the more they give us." One general asked what the Council still didn't understand. The envoy's smile was sharp as a blade. "They think war is an event. To us, it is inheritance. They believe we are reckless. In truth, we are meticulous. Every laugh, every smile, every joke, these are masks. And when masks fall, predators show their teeth." Reports arrived daily of human strikes. Small outposts in Council space went dark without warning. Trade routes collapsed. Messages played over seized comm channels, always in the same deceptively courteous tone. "Thank you for your cooperation. Consider this a lesson in humility." Some messages ended with laughter, light, almost friendly, yet haunting to alien ears. The effect was devastating. Soldiers who once mocked humans now trembled when ordered to face them. Propaganda lost its edge, for no story could erase the evidence of ships disappearing, outposts silenced, fleets broken. A phrase began to circulate among frightened species: "The humans smile before they kill." Alien generals debated strategy in frantic councils. Some demanded overwhelming bombardment of Earth, to scour the planet before it spread further. Others warned that Earth might already be inside their systems, ready to retaliate with precision. The Chancellor thundered against hesitation, but even his fury seemed hollow when entire sectors whispered rebellion against his orders. And still, humanity pressed forward. On a desert world ruled by insectoids, entire hives woke to find their command centers dismantled overnight, walls carved with graffiti no translator could soften. Kilroy was here. On a trade hub orbiting a gas giant, alien merchants panicked when their ledgers filled with human jokes, credits replaced by smiley faces and cryptic lines like "thanks for the tip." On a frozen outpost at the edge of Council space, soldiers vanished, leaving behind only recordings of human voices singing songs no alien tongue could decipher. It was not merely war. It was mockery sharpened into strategy, humor used as blade. Every act unmasked humanity further, not as reckless primitives, but as predators who wrapped terror in wit. Within the bunker, The envoy studied the reports with calm satisfaction. He remembered standing in the council chamber, bowing, smiling, pretending humility. That face was gone. The real face stared back in the glow of the maps. Patient, cold, unrelenting. One of his generals, older and scarred, asked if the council understood yet. The envoy's voice was low, almost gentle. They are beginning to. They expected defiance. They did not expect elegance. They think we resist for pride. They cannot fathom that we are baiting them. Every fleet they send, every sanction they decree, every threat they shout, it all leads them deeper into the trap we already built. The general frowned. And when they see the trap? The envoy's smile returned, thin and chilling. By then, it will be too late. Even as fear spread, the council clung to arrogance. The chancellor broadcast across the stars, declaring Earth doomed, promising total annihilation. His words boomed with authority, but cracks spread behind him. Delegates muttered, citizens doubted, soldiers hesitated. A council built on fear now found itself afraid. The envoy recorded his own broadcast in reply. His tone was courteous, almost cheerful. His words were edged with venom. We hear your declarations. We respect your confidence. But let us remind you, this was not our first war. It is only your first with us. You will learn what others before us learned. Humans do not fear war. We perfect it. That message carried further than any the council had ever made. Worlds that had never cared about Earth suddenly listened. The polite smile, the steady voice, the promise hidden in plain words, it unsettled millions. Because for the first time, they saw humanity not as a mistake, not as a joke, but as an inevitability. In taverns on distant moons, mercenaries refused contracts against Earth. On oceanic worlds, mothers hushed their children when they spoke of humans. Even within the council, a few delegates quietly packed their belongings, ready to flee before the storm grew. And deep in the envoy's bunker, the maps shifted once more. More fleets mobilized against Earth, stronger, louder, larger. The generals murmured about the danger, but the envoy's eyes gleamed with cold light. They come, he said softly, and they bring us exactly what we want. For a moment, silence filled the room. The weight of what he meant pressed against every heart. This was not about survival, not even about victory. This was about transformation. Humanity was not fighting to endure. Humanity was fighting to ascend. The envoy leaned back, his voice calm, his smile faint, as though speaking to the council again though they could not hear. You demanded tribute. You will give it. In blood, in fear, in silence. And across the stars, the council prepared its largest fleet yet, believing it would finally end the human defiance. They did not realize that the trap was already closing, that every step they took was chosen for them. The envoy stood before the glowing maps, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sharp as blades. His words were quiet, almost tender, as though speaking to the galaxy itself. You have not yet seen us unmasked. The galaxy moved like a great beast roused from slumber, shaking itself into violence. Fleets gathered, banners of the council streaming in every direction, their numbers vast enough to blot out suns. Every broadcast declared the same promise. Earth would be silenced, humanity erased, order restored. The chancellor thundered his decree across the stars, his voice heavy with rage, yet beneath the booming certainty lay cracks. Even he felt the tremor that no fleet could still, fear that the humans had meant every syllable of their single word. From the surface of Earth, the skies looked deceptively calm. Children played in city streets. Farmers drove machines across fields. Satellites fell silent one by one, not from enemy fire but from deliberate human choice. The planet appeared fragile, unguarded, waiting for the hammer. That was the illusion. Humanity had always thrived on illusions. The envoy, standing once more in the hidden bunker deep beneath rock, studied the star charts blooming above him like constellations of fire. He clasped his hands behind his back, posture calm, eyes sharp. They are coming with everything they have, one general said, voice hushed in awe at the sheer size of the approaching fleet. If numbers decided war, we would already be dead. The envoy allowed himself a faint smile. Numbers are comforting lies. Strategy is truth. They march into our jaws and call it conquest. They cannot imagine that we might want them to come. The room fell silent. Around the table, men and women leaned forward, drawn into the pull of his words. They all knew what was coming, though only the envoy spoke it aloud. They think Earth is the battleground. It is only the bait. In council space, the armada moved. Hundreds of ships, their hulls gleaming with the authority of centuries, their cannons glowing like captive suns. The aliens aboard whispered with false courage, mocking humanity's bravado, promising swift annihilation. Yet even among the proudest commanders, unease grew. Reports of vanished fleets lingered in their minds. Tales of laughter across comms haunted their sleep. Still, pride drove them onward. They would make an example of Earth, or die trying. As they drew near, the trap sprang. It began subtly. Navigation systems twisted, coordinates altered by a hand they could not see. Engines sputtered, then flared, obeying commands not given. Across the fleet, alarms blared, lights flickered, officers shouted in confusion. Then the voices came, human voices, calm, polite, mocking. "Welcome, honored guests. We've prepared a place for you." Screens lit with strange images, Earth children smiling, baseball games mid-swing, families laughing around glowing fires. To the aliens it was gibberish, but the tone unsettled them more than weapons ever could. The humans were not afraid. They were mocking. Then the real weapons struck. Not from Earth's orbit but from within Council territory itself. Stations once considered safe erupted in fire, crippled by sabotage. Supply lines collapsed. Communications blacked out. Across entire sectors, human forces emerged not as defenders but as infiltrators, already waiting inside the walls. Sleeper fleets cloaked in silence, agents hidden for years, code woven into the Council's very systems. Humanity revealed its hand not with desperation but with ruthless precision. In the bunker, generals watched the chaos unfold across their maps. One gasped as icons of alien fleets winked out, one after another. How long have these preparations been in place? The envoy's eyes glinted. Since the moment they first looked at us with contempt. We learned their arrogance before we ever spoke a word. And arrogance is the simplest material from which to build a noose. Alien commanders screamed into their comms, ordering regroup, demanding explanations. Yet everywhere they turned, humans had already been. Stations filled with graffiti mocked them. Data cores melted with notes left behind. Needs improvement. Thanks for beta testing. Even destroyed ships carried traces of human humor, as though laughter itself had been carved into steel. Still, the Council pressed forward. Pride was heavier than fear. They hurled their armada at Earth, determined to burn the blue planet even if it cost half their strength. For a moment, it seemed they might succeed. Ships filled the skies above Earth, their shadows blotting the stars. Weapons primed, targeting arrays locked. The hammer poised to fall. And then the skies themselves turned against them. The envoy had planned for this moment. Earth's orbit erupted in hidden fire, satellite swarms cloaked until now, rail cannons hidden beneath oceans, launch platforms disguised as weather stations. Alien ships found themselves caught in crossfire from weapons they had never seen. Their systems faltered, already compromised by human code. Missiles struck with impossible accuracy, piercing shields as though they were paper. Entire squadrons vanished in coordinated silence. Amid the destruction, human comms broadcast again, steady, mocking, unbearably calm. "We thank you for your visit. We regret to inform you that the meeting is cancelled. Refreshments will be served at your funerals." Terror spread faster than fire. Alien soldiers screamed as their ships tore apart, yet the greater horror was the realization that none of this was chaos. It was orchestrated, elegant, almost beautiful in its cruelty. Humanity was not scrambling to survive. They were conducting a symphony of annihilation. In the council chamber, pandemonium reigned. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding retreat, demanding escalation, demanding answers. The chancellor roared that Earth must be obliterated, but even his voice cracked beneath the weight of failure. Reports arrived faster than he could silence them. Fleets gone, stations lost, worlds trembling. The Council's order unraveled before his many eyes. Back in the bunker, the envoy stood before the glowing maps, his expression unreadable. His generals watched him with awe, some with fear. He had worn politeness like armor, humility like a mask, but now the mask was gone. What remained was something colder, sharper. "This was never defense," he said quietly. "This was revelation. They demanded tribute. Instead, they gave us their fleets, their systems, their pride. The tribute we demanded was not grain or minerals. It was their certainty. And now it is ours." The room was silent, the weight of his words heavier than the thunder of war. For all their laughter, for all their jokes, every human there knew they stood at a precipice. They had not only defended Earth, they had changed the balance of the galaxy. The envoy's gaze sharpened, his tone calm, almost tender. "We told them war awaited. They thought it a threat. They did not understand it was an invitation." Outside, the last remnants of the Council fleet shattered in orbit, debris burning like falling stars across Earth's sky. Children pointed upward, laughing at the streaks of light, unaware they were watching the funeral pyres of alien empires. In distant systems, species who had once mocked humanity huddled in silence, whispering prayers, unsure whether to fear or to beg alliance. The Council, once unshakable, now teetered on collapse. Its authority, built on tribute and fear, had met something it could not bend. Humanity had unmasked itself, not as a desperate world but as a predator patient enough to smile before striking. The envoy turned from the maps, his hands still clasped behind his back, his voice almost casual as he addressed the room. "They will regroup. They will try again. But they are already ours. The galaxy does not fear us yet, but it will." And with that, the lights dimmed as new data filled the screens. Transmissions intercepted, allies whispering of betrayal, whole species debating defection. The trap was not only sprung, it was still closing, its teeth hidden in every corner of the stars. The envoy's smile was faint, polite once more, but his eyes carried the cold light of inevitability. "They thought war was our burden. They will learn it is our gift." Far beyond Earth, the remnants of the Council's fleets limped home, carrying survivors who would tell the tale of human laughter echoing across ruined comms. The story would spread, growing with each retelling, turning from rumor into legend. And in every corner of the galaxy, a single word would linger, whispered with dread. War.